Hope you wouldn't notice.
Susan's wearing purple. You ready? Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. This is State Treasurer Dale Falwell. I normally gavel us in, but I'm going to Paul us in today in honor of the homecoming at Western Carolina University, and we're really glad to be here. Before I call the meeting to order, I just want to take an opportunity to say just a few things about our experience here at Western Carolina University. There used to be a congressman from Greensboro, and he would go home to his home place, Howard Coble, and his mom would make a big spread of food, and Howard would say thank you, and his mom would say it just didn't jump up on the table by itself. So this meeting here at Western Carolina just didn't jump up on the table by itself. So I want to take just an opportunity on behalf of the whole board to extend our thank yous to Chancellor Kelly Brown. Chancellor Brown had to leave us to go to a very important accreditation meeting. And I just want to say for the record that Debbie Tomasco has asked to have these microphones for her Christmas present this year. So if y'all come back in this room and the microphones aren't here, then you need to look to Debbie to see what happened to them. Christy Anger, Christy, and Coleman Leopard are here. Thank you. Ed and Frank, who are technical support, are here with us today. Thank you very much. And Annette, Christy, Wes, Sarah, Megan, Michael, and the rest of the Western Carolina University team, thank you for your radical hospitality. Let's give them a big round of applause. We're joined here today by some other special guests. Amy Owens, who's the town manager of Franklin, along with her finance director Sarah Bishop, and Allie Stamey, budget and fiscal analyst. Would you please stand, and we'd like to welcome you. As we've toured this great campus, we want to recognize our representatives who have worked tirelessly for Western Carolina University, and we're physically seeing some of the impact of that today. And that also impacts the local government commission, because this commission, once upon a time, approved the Connect NC bonds, and some of this construction that we're seeing around this campus came from that bond issuance. So Representative Mike Clampett and Representative Carl Gillespie, please stand. We'd like to welcome you and thank you for your service. I'm not sure anybody else is here. I did want to say a special hello to Gail Woody. I haven't seen her in a few years. She's joining us from the Jackson County Board of Commissioners. Ms. Woody, thank you. Thank you. And with that, we will, did I miss anyone? Okay. With that, I'll now call this meeting to order. Cindy, would you please call the roll to determine a quorum?
Yes, sir. This is Cindy Aiken, Legal Counsel. Auditor Wood. Here. In person. Secretary Marshall. In person. Secretary Penny.
Here.
Ms. Virtual today. Mr. Burns.
Here.
Here in person. Ms. Hoffman.
Present.
Oh, thank you. And Mr. Philbeck.
Here.
Thank you. Virtual and Treasurer Falwell.
Here.
In person. And we have two absences today, Mr. Butler and Ms. Harvey. Let's see, I'll go ahead and establish our attendance for the staff. Sharon Edmondson is here. Jennifer Wimmer. Susan McCullough. Did you already test her mic? Okay. Susan is present virtually. Lewis Andrews, you still with us?
Here.
Thank you. I'm Cindy, I'm here. Debbie and Victoria, both here. Treasurer, should I quickly, 2 quick housekeeping items? Our procedures haven't changed, but because we're remote and we have more staff participating online, we would ask that everyone participating remotely, that is members, our staff, members of the public, please remember to keep your mic muted when you are not speaking, and that will help us tremendously. And if we have any kind of power or AV interruption, the meeting will continue, and just be alert to the fact that the audio and video will continue to be broadcast. So you may not, even if you think we can't hear you, we might be able to. So just a word to the wise. And thank you very much for your cooperation.
Thank you, Cindy. I'm now going to ask Representatives Clampett and Gillespie to lead us for our Pledge of Allegiance. Would you all please stand? Pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Secretary Marshall will join us in pledging to our state flag.
I salute the flag of North Carolina and the old state, love, loyalty, and faith.
Yeah. Okay. There's for those that are joining us in person, there's copies of the agenda if you'd like to join along. Members, we have a conflict of interest statement. You've seen the agenda that's before us. Does anyone present have an actual potential or the appearance of a conflict of interest regarding the matters that are before us? Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve the meeting minutes. Without objection, anybody who makes this motion or second to a motion will be considered a yes vote for efficiency purposes. Hearing no objection, do I hear a motion? Thank you, Mr. Thank you.
Second, Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Thank you, Auditor Wood. Motion second being made. Hearing no further discussion, the clerk will call the roll.
Okay. It's on the minutes. Secretary Marshall. Thank you. Secretary Penny.
Aye.
Councilwoman Hoffman.
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Philbeck.
Aye.
And Treasurer.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you. We'll now go to our agenda item regarding Sunset Beach. Jennifer has the floor. And joining us from Sunset Beach today are Lisa, Tara, and Grady, who are the town manager, finance director, and town attorney for Sunset Beach.
Good afternoon. This is Jennifer Wimmer. The Sunset Beach transaction is basically the same as the transaction that was brought forth on the September LGC meeting. A difference is because the interest rate was set to expire at the end of September. The town has renegotiated with the bank, so there was an updated interest amount. The additional resolution from the town board was adopted with the new interest rate. So I'll turn it back over for any questions.
Staff's recommendation is to
Approve.
members, this was on our agenda last month. There were some questions and controversy about potential conflicts of interest. I'll entertain a motion to, actually, are the folks from Sunset Beach on the line? Okay.
Mr. Treasurer, we have Lisa Anglin. She is the town manager. Ms. Anglin, are others with you in the room?
While we're waiting on them, would anybody care to make a motion to accept staff's recommendation regarding the application on Sunset Beach?
I move the approval of Sunset Beach application pending.
Okay. Motion by Mr. Penny, second. Second, Ms. Hoffman. Any further discussion? Did they join us or not?
Ms. Anglin, are you with us? And Mr. Richardson, are you able to hear us? Mr. Richardson is the town attorney. Is Tara Nichols?
Good afternoon, this is Grady Richardson, and I can hear you, and I finally think I figured out how to unmute my microphone.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. This is State Treasurer Falwell. We have a motion and a second regarding your application. Given the fact this was delayed for one meeting and there seemed to be a lot of questions regarding conflicts, is there anything that you'd like to add before we call for a vote?
No, sir. On September 29th, I submitted a response to your office with 4 or 5 exhibits in support of that response. And to my knowledge, there's been no further questions that have been presented to the town that have gone unanswered. If I'm wrong, someone can let me know, and I'll be happy to address it.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. Is there any opposition to this transaction in Sunset Beach? Mr. Richardson,
Yes, sir.
is there any opposition to this transaction in Sunset Beach?
Well, I can only go on the comments that I have seen that were submitted by a handful of individuals. It was attachment B, the Sunset Beach public comments, and when those comments were presented, we were notified, and then I submitted the response on behalf of the town addressing the concerns raised by the LGC. And so to my knowledge, despite those comments made by the 4 or 5, 6 individuals, one of which was the predominant complainant, Mr. Serrato, I have been the town attorney since 2014, and I served the town when Mr. Serrato was a council member, and maybe even when he was mayor, I cannot recall. And I am satisfied that the complaints made by Mr. Serrato and others about a conflict of interest are without merit. I've looked into it. I have constantly dealt with this issue from Mr. Serrato and others. I have also looked at the other generalized concerns of environmental impacts, the claim of marshlands. There are approximately 14 single-family buildable lots on this land if the town is not granted permission to proceed by the LGC that can be built into anywhere from 14 or more single-family residential homes. This tract will be preserved from development. So the environmental concerns that are being raised by Mr. Serrato and others escapes me. It is going to be preserved and maintained as a public park. We received the part of grant as one of 39 recipients, and it will be a tremendous benefit to the public and those who visit the town for a variety of recreational and public benefit reasons, including public trust rights and public trust uses. And I believe there were, Ms. Anglin submitted a letter to Ms. Wimmer after these comments were received addressing the claim of submerged lands, which I have also, over the course of 8 years of representing this town, dealt with repeatedly by Mr. Serrato and others, and even had the Department of Justice weigh in on it to support the fact of what I have been saying, which is, number one, if it's public trust lands, no one can own those lands. There's no harm, though, in the town possessing quitclaim deeds and otherwise that would be given to it by entities, because then the town can ensure that it's going to be maintained and preserved for conservation reasons, environmental reasons, and public benefit reasons. And that so long as the town does not try to prohibit members of the public from utilizing public trust lands, there is no issue or concern from the Department of Justice standpoint with the town possessing quitclaim deeds and other instruments of title to lands that may have navigable and fact streams and be affected by public trust rights. Beyond that, I'm unaware of any other concerns. I mean, there's generalized concerns by Mr. Serrato and the other folks about collusion. There's just not a scintilla of any truth to any collusion that Mr. Serrato is alleging. And there are no conflicts of interest that override or come close to overriding the affirmative duty of council to vote. I have looked into it on behalf of Councilor Borman as well as Mayor Pro Tem Corbett, and I am 100% satisfied, Treasurer Falwell, that there are no impermissible conflicts of interest or other appearances of impropriety that preclude the town council's resolution and override each council member's duty to vote as required by law in the state of North Carolina. I'm happy to answer any other questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. Any questions from board members?
I do.
Auditor Wood.
So my question is about the assets or what's going to be built, constructed. We talked about things that were going to be built on in this park, and then the flooding, how easily flooded it would be, and then those monies spent would be wasted. So that's the one thing that I need to get comfortable with now, is that you won't be putting these assets on the land, swings, places to launch these kayaks or whatever. How much money is going to be spent for assets that will be washed away when the flooding happens?
I will do my best to answer some of this, and then I'll defer to Ms. Anglin and Ms. Tara for other specifics that I don't attend every council meeting that comes up for the town. But with respect to flooding, we recently had Hurricane Ian, and I'm not sure if the LGC was provided pictures or not of this area in question. There was some flooding of the area in question, as there was throughout the town's island portion. We're talking about a barrier island that's going to experience hurricane effects and tropical storm effects, and even king tides and lunar effects. The question is, this land is not going to be treated or any more susceptible to Mother Nature and storms than any other portion of this island that's already been developed for single family homes.
That's not my question. That is not my question. I'm asking you what assets, how much of this money, what's going to be put here that could be easily washed away with flooding? That's my question.
I don't know what's specifically planned to be inserted as improvements. I can imagine that it would be a pier and dock for launching of kayaks, crabbing, and fishing. I don't know beyond that what the town, if it has even envisioned specific improvements, but I'll defer to Tara and Lisa. I believe there was a brief statement in our submissions of, I think it was Exhibit 4, that I submitted on September 29th, a brief statement, if I can have a moment to flip to it.
Can you hear Lisa now? We were having some technical difficulties.
So with respect to Exhibit 4 of my September 29th response to the LGC, the Majestic Oaks property development was summarized that in consultation with town engineers, we would develop a plan that would be similar to the mainland town park to include a walking trail, benches, swings, fishing pier, observation deck, kayak launch area, restroom facilities, and those sorts of things that would be low impact on the roughly 4 acres of uplands development that comprise this Majestic Oaks tract. Beyond that, I'd have to defer to Lisa and Terry.
Are you able to hear us now? We have been having some technical difficulties.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, yay. This is Terry Nichols, and I'm with Lisa England.
Good afternoon. As for what is going to be put on this property, the town council has not made any decisions of what will be put on the park land. We did have public hearings and public meetings where our engineer brought in poster boards and got the public's input of what they would like to see on this property. As with our park on the mainland, anything that would be put out there on the island would be able to be removed prior to a storm, except for if they do decide to build a pier and a kayak launch. But everything else would be removable. We would not build a bathroom building, but we do have trailers that we have restroom units that are on the island now, that the council could consider putting one of those or 2 of those down there. But just like the ones at the gazebo, those are removed prior to a storm also.
We're able to remove our swings and benches. Pretty much everything that we have in our park, we're able to pull off through our public works.
Thank you. Questions from board members? This Treasurer Falwell spoke about the conflicts. I don't live in Sunset Beach, but are there any city council people who have an earshot or an eye shot of where their personal residence is versus where 14 homes could be built if this were sold to someone other than the city?
So Treasurer Falwell, in our materials from September 29th, there's an aerial shot of a GIS map. The land in question is across a canal or a waterway channel, feeder channel, a finger channel, I'm sorry. So on one side is the subject property, and on the other side of this channel is Mayor Pro Tem Corbett's home. Down the street, significantly, I'm just looking at Exhibit 3 here from our September 29th submission. Councilor Borman's house is located dozens of lots away, if not 30 or 40 lots away from the subject property. There is a street that he has to use to go into and access his home and drive by this area. And neither one of them, under the law that defines adjacency in the state of North Carolina, neither Councilor Borman and Mayor Pro Tem Corbett are adjacent to the property that's in question. At best, Mayor Pro Tem Corbett is across a channel, a public trust navigable water body and channel of water from the subject property. And if it's not a public park, if this doesn't close, the developer would be able to build upwards of potentially 14 single-family homes on this tract.
Okay.
Similar to everything that is immediately adjacent to and surrounding Mayor Pro Tem Corbett's home and Councilor Borman's home.
Thank you. Any other questions from board members?
Yes.
Mr. Burns.
Sir, I guess you mentioned earlier when you were discussing the allegations of conflict of interest, that nothing rose to the level where you as counsel would say that it overcame their duty to vote. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that would be direct financial benefit from the outcome of the vote and other such things. I think Coates Cannons has a good article on that. Is that what you're?
Yes, in fact, as part of our September 29th response, we attached a School of Government article that talks about the spectrum of conflicts of interest and specific examples of conflicts of interest in certain transactions. And you're constantly having to always evaluate, at least from my perspective as the town attorney, you're always constantly evaluating that spectrum of a potential conflict of interest that could give rise to overcoming the statutory affirmative duty to vote. In this instance, I find this to be on the lower extreme of the spectrum away from any conflict of interest. There's no direct financial benefit to any council member. There's no personal relationship of any of the council members with the seller of the property to the town, and that's set out in our exhibits to my September 29th response, that each council member and the mayor were all specifically asked whether or not they had any relationships of any kind, personal, business, or otherwise, with the seller of this property, and they all unequivocally answered no. Some of them have not even ever spoken to either principal of the seller, much less met them in person. Although down in Sunset Beach, the Gore family name is well known, but beyond that general familiarity, there's nothing that shows or gives the appearance of impropriety whatsoever. For instance, there's allegations of collusion. Number one, if there was
Mr.
Richardson,
anything.
You answered my question. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Ms. Richardson, this Treasurer Falwell, I can't get into a legal conversation about what rises to the level. We're in Western North Carolina where things either are or they aren't, generally speaking, a conflict. So obviously we're all fans of Sunset Beach. We've all heard of Sunset Beach. Many of us have visited Sunset Beach, but this came to our attention. We didn't go out seeking information about these conflicts. It's people who brought it to our attention, and no one that you've mentioned is anyone that I don't think I've ever spoken to. It's other folks from that community. And looking at the visual, I'm just a simple motorcycle mechanic, but if you have a piece of property that's within eye shot of another piece of property where 14 single housing developments will never be built, I just think that increases the value of your property. Do you agree or disagree with that?
I would say, generally speaking, you're probably correct. But even if that's the case, the general prospect of something increasing the value of your property does not overcome the statutory affirmative duty to vote. If the town wanted to repave the road of Canal Drive, running past Councilor Corbett's house, fixing up potholes, paving what used to be a dirt road to make it asphalt, does that mean he has to recuse himself because the paved road is going to increase the value of his home because of a desired improvement of accessibility? You can take and look at improvements and direct and indirect benefits to its logical extreme, and it gets to the point where no council member could ever arguably vote on any town business, and that's the reason why you've got this affirmative statutory duty to vote in the absence of a clear conflict of interest under certain circumstances. Here, because it doesn't fall under a direct pecuniary gain or a personal familial relationship or business relationship, it's just looking at whether or not there's some general conflict of interest. And again, in my opinion, and I don't have a dog in the fight. My job is to to advise council on following the law. I believe the law is more readily to be broken if they recuse themselves because of this generalized idea of some indirect improvement or increased value to their home. I think that's a more likely violation of the law than someone voting for or against this transaction on council. And that's where I came down on it.
Okay, I think thank you for answering our questions. Alder Wood has a comment.
No, just, blocking your view and living right across from the property is real different than saying that every councilman has to recuse themselves because there'll be some indirect benefit. So just don't carry this thing too far. And I think where we're getting is just you're carrying it too far because there is some obvious appearances of conflicts. And again, these houses had to be, I assume, built on stilts, and if it's going to block his view, I'm sorry, I just take issue with making this sound like it is absolutely an indirect advantage or benefit. So I just be done with the discussion. Hear what you're saying. I think according to the letter of the law, you're right, but I think you're just beating a dead horse over something I disagree with you on. So.
Auditor Wood, if I may, as you look at Exhibit 3 from September 29th, nothing's going to block Mayor Pro Tem Corbett's view. He's got an unfettered view of the water channel. If you were to say that 14 homes to the left of his property are going to block his view, that is not the case because his view is already blocked by existing single-family homes shown on Exhibit 3. They're not going to block his view anymore. He's already looking at other homes across the waterway and in multiple rows of other homes across the waterway. These homes would be built closer, but no more closer than homes that are directly across from him in the waterway. So he's not having his view detrimentally affected or improved. It's going to remain stagnant. It is. If you're looking at the same exhibit I'm looking at, his view is already negatively impacted, and it's not going to be any more negatively impacted if homes were built on this subject tract of property. And his view's not affected either. He's got the same view of the water, and he's going to have the same view of that water, whether this is a public park and preserved conservation space, or whether it's additional upwards of 14 homes that are built on it, no different than the homes that are already there.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. Mr. Penny made a motion. Ms. Holloman put a second to that motion. Without objection, is any more discussion? The clerk will call the roll.
Okay. Okay. As Treasurer said, motion is Secretary Penny, second by Hoffman. Auditor Wood?
No.
Thank you. Secretary Marshall? Mr. Burns?
Aye.
Mr. Philbeck?
Aye.
Thank you, sir. And Treasurer Falwell?
No.
No. I have 5 ayes and 2 noes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 2 absent.
Thank you.
Motion carries.
Motion passes. Sunset Beach folks, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next agenda item is our next item is to turn the meeting over to Jennifer and Susan to quickly talk about our UAL financing contracts at Town of Robbins.
To start off with, Sharon's going to give a background of the UAL financing contracts.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Treasurer. Right, in July of this year, Session Law 2022-53 was passed and enacted, which changed the debt financing approval requirements for units that are on the unit assistance list. We lowered the threshold for those units of several of the criteria that trigger LGC approval being required. Currently, LGC approval is required if something extends 5 or more years, and generally speaking is $500,000 or more. There's some other qualifications in there. And we're talking about bank financing contracts, not GO bonds or anything like that. Those all have to come before the commission. But Session Law 2022-53 modified those thresholds just for units that are on the unit assistance list to 3 years and $50,000. All right, so quite a difference from 5 years and 500,000. We also put in a trigger for motor vehicles. Currently, local governments are not required to have approval for the purchase, lease, or lease purchase of motor vehicles. However, now units that are on the unit assistance list have to get that approval if the contract is $50,000 or more. So in order to prepare our units of government for this change, we contacted all of them and told them about it via email. We have deployed an online debt inquiry portal where all units can request assistance with the debt application and let the debt staff know that they're considering submitting an application. We have developed a streamlined application just for the UAL units seeking finance and contract approval under this statute. And we also have waived the requirement to have the current audit available because our goal in changing these limits is to make sure that these units are making sound financial decisions. It's not intended to be punitive, but it's so that we can know what they're doing and that they're not out there entering into multiple financing contracts that are detrimental to their financial condition. Finally, we've dedicated a team of both fiscal staff and debt staff to work with these folks as they get used to this change.
Sharon, before
I'm sorry.
Mr. Clampett leaves, does this include fire trucks?
Right now, they're still considered to be motor vehicles. So if a unit is on the unit assistance list and the truck costs more than $50,000, yes.
I just want to clear our palate on that. Thank you.
So units seeking LGC approval under these new requirements will be presented to the commission as a separate group from our other approval requests. And we will include a memo that summarizes the staff's financial review and debt analysis, as well as the details of the financing. All right, now I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer to go over the details of the town of Robbins. So this is the very first one of these that we presented.
So the town of Robbins.
Not Robbinsville.
No.
Okay.
The town of Robbins contacted us regarding a paving project that is almost complete, but they are looking to finance the paving contract for 10 years with an interest rate of 3.99 with Fidelity Bank. They have given us the information that not only the debt staff has looked at, but the fiscal staff as well. And they are having their public hearing on November the 17th. So this would actually be a conditional approval upon that public hearing, and then they would close their loan after that. Since this is the first one, if there's any questions, we do have several that have our other units of government that have already reached out that will be on the December agenda, but we'll take any questions you have on this transaction.
Any questions from the board? Need a motion, right? Yes, Secretary Marshall.
On the new form that we have.
Secretary Marshall, go ahead, push your button.
On the new form that we have here on FPICs, yes, they had, and when I looked at those, they have a list of deficiencies. And so has this, I consider that a problem. This one exceptional because it looks like it's mostly going to be PAL bill money that pays it.
So that is one of the things that we have looked at because it is dedicated revenue source of PAL bill funds. Paying this, the fiscal section in their review has determined that the FPICs can be worked through, but because they are PAL bill funds, that is exceptional. And all of the units on the unit assistant list will have some FPIC indicators. But that is why we're treating these separately than anything that was on the regular agenda.
Is there any point at which, may I follow up, Mr. Treasurer?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there any point at which the list of FPICs get so great that we just need to send the word to, that you don't need to be borrowing any money? It's not going to go forward?
Absolutely. We have some units of government that have contacted us that we are still working through their financial indicators of concern. And we have not brought them to the LGC yet. And Susan can elaborate.
Susan, you have the floor.
Sir?
You have the floor.
Okay, all right. So
If you need the floor.
yes, I do. Just for a couple of minutes. So what staff received with this information was different. We did have a 2021 audit that came in last week, the very last week, October 25th. But the 2022 is now due. So they are late on their 2022 audit. We wouldn't have let anybody else come for the larger debt. We definitely waived the audit requirement for this one. We looked at budget to actuals. We asked them, we worked with them to make sure that these items were budgeted or would be budgeted when they got ready to pay the debt. We looked at their unit history. Do they have a trend of being a well-managed unit? What sorts of issues do they have? Whatever other information is pertinent to a decision, we'll be asking for. So this one is, like Sharon said, the first one. So we were kind of trying to figure it out. But what we determined from looking at the town of Robertsonville and the budget to actual information, as you saw, it's budgeted with it's funded with PAL bill. So there's a revenue stream there to fund it. They've also got some fund balance, PAL bill fund balance sitting in their financial statements at the end of 2021. So between their funding stream of $34,000 plus the PAL bill fund balance that they've had sitting in their fund balance in 21, which is admittedly a while ago now, and the budget to actuals that we have for the current year, we were able to see, to ascertain, get comfortable that they can afford the financing. And then we also looked at need. Obviously, they can't use this money for anything but PAL bills, so they need to go ahead and get that, and spend that money and get those repairs that need to be made. We will be requiring them, to get to your question, Secretary Marshall, we will be requiring them, just like any other unit, to respond to their FPICs in a satisfactory manner. And then we'll be following up with them as the 2022 audit review season progresses, if they continue to stay late, like we would with all of our units. After looking at the information they provided and what it was for, we determined that there was an established need and that they could afford this. Just as an FYI, looking at what they provided in 2021, the unit Robbins has been on the UAL. They were on their 19, they were on their 1920. Right now they're on there for 21 because we did not yet have their audit. We've got it now, but I think they'll stay on the UAL with the internal controls that they have, and we'll continue to do that monitoring and that budget review. So any questions for me?
Well, I just noted that they didn't have a pre-audit process and they overspent in certain categories. And, we don't know that they still have that cash fund in in the PAL bill because it was only the 21 report and now it's.
That's true. Mhm. Yes, and those findings were significant, noted as significant deficiencies by their auditor and concerned us as well. And we will be following up with the unit on those.
I'm comfortable because of the PAL bill availability.
Okay.
It would be
Us too. Yeah.
a question.
Thanks, Secretary Marshall. Wood?
Susan, back in the day when I worked at the LGC, we were checking to see that, we were checking, the LGC staff, when the audit reports came in, to see that units were not using PAL bill money for things that they shouldn't be using it for. We found that many of them, a lot of them were. Is the LGC still checking those financial statements? And we do break out PAL bill money as a restricted in the fund balance, but are we tracking and making sure that what they spent the PAL bill revenues on were really, I'm not sure that the auditors are, because if it's not directed material, they won't. And is there any way to know that what they're spending the PAL bill monies on is really what they should be spending it on?
I think not, without looking at the PAL bill reports that they file. Generally, you can see that they're spent from their PAL bill, and we still have it broken out that way in our illustrative statements, which a lot of them use, that so that they break out PAL bill separately. It absolutely is still a separate line item in municipalities' balance sheets. So we can see what their PAL bill fund balance is. We can see what their PAL bill expenditures are, as well as the revenue coming in every year. But without breaking down, going down into a level of detail that we don't get in the financials anymore, it's hard to know. So I think that would be something that would come through the DOT reporting process now.
Thank you.
Okay.
Ms. Evans.
I have one additional comment. We do plan to bring to the commission members a list of any units that we turn down under this financing, so that, you know, it doesn't appear as if we're just rubber stamping them all. Because there are some units on the UAL that, unless it's a matter of public health, that we probably would not sign off on.
Thank you very much. I want to thank the folks from Robbins, Clint Mack, Stephanie Manis, and Jessica Coltrane for joining us today. My middle initial is Robbins, so I'll still vote on this anyway. So, and so glad to have you on. We've had a motion. Do I hear a motion?
I'll move approval, Mike Philbeck.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Mr. Burns, second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll.
Okay. Town of Robbins, Philbeck motion, second by Burns. Auditor Wood?
Aye.
Thank you. Secretary Marshall? Secretary Penny?
Aye.
Thank you. Councilwoman Hoffman?
Aye.
And Treasurer Falwell?
Aye.
Thank you.
We're now on to our consent agenda that will start with Greenville Utilities Commission through the miscellaneous item Greensboro Housing Authority, which is identified in your packet as attachment C. Does any member wish to pull any particular item off the consent agenda?
Mr. Treasurer.
Yes, sir.
I don't want to pull it off the consent agenda, but would like to just note to invite people to take a look at the Milner project that's on this list. It's a really neat project for a Presbyterian church in Raleigh, North Carolina that closed, and the presbytery made the land available for affordable housing, and the Milner project is what resulted from that for affordable housing for seniors on the New Bern Avenue corridor. And it's just a pretty neat reuse project and the type of thing that we should encourage. Yeah, 156 residences. So
Good.
really
Thank
neat.
you for pointing that out. I look forward to walking down there and looking at that sometime. How far out New Bern is that?
It's the old Milner Presbyterian Church. It's right on New Bern Avenue. It'll be right smack dab on the.
I mean, near the
BRT.
mansion or near Wake Med?
Oh, how far down? I think it's about halfway between downtown and.
Okay, good. Thank you. We have a motion and a second before we call for, I'm sorry.
We don't have.
I'll move approval.
Thank you.
Second.
Now you see why she has the big paw. There you go. Motion and second being made. Any further discussion? Just for those who may be listening, always take an opportunity to point out unfunded healthcare and pension liabilities. Gaston County, 84 million of unfunded healthcare liabilities, and about 20 million of 18 million of Elders unfunded pension liability. Greensboro Housing Authority only has 1.7 million of OPEB and none for pension. Greenville Utilities, 40 million for OPEB and no for LEO Elders unfunded pension. Raleigh Housing Authority, 1.3 million. Wow. Actually have 3 million in assets. So they're actually, it's the first parentheses I've ever seen around one of these. They are overfunded their healthcare liability, if I'm looking at that right, which will be partially offset by their Elders liability. So congratulations, Raleigh Housing Authority. Sunset Beach, 4.7 million of unfunded healthcare liability, approximately 2.2 million of unfunded Elders and LEO liability. We have a motion, a second on the floor. Any further discussion? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll to approve the consent agenda, which includes Greenville Utilities Commission through the Greensboro Housing Authority.
All right, that was motion Burns, second Wood. Secretary Marshall? Thank you. Secretary Penny?
Aye.
Councilwoman Hoffman?
Aye.
Mr. Philbeck?
Aye.
And Treasurer Falwell. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now turn the meeting over to discuss some miscellaneous non-action items from Jennifer regarding Gaston County IFPFC Authority.
So the miscellaneous item is from the Gaston County Industrial Facilities and Pollution Control Financing Authority. And what this is because of the LIBOR switch, the authority has changed their put date as well as changing the LIBOR base rate to a fixed rate. So there is no extension of maturity, no change to the payment schedule. So this is for information.
Thank you very much. Well, next for Susan, for updates, we got some great news on our update list, and there'll be a couple of votes required. Go ahead, Susan. I mean, Sharon.
Nope.
Susan.
Yes.
Cynthia.
Yes.
Everybody starts with an S.
Thank you, Treasurer. So I'm talking from attachment D, the unit updates. You've got summaries for all of the 6 towns we're actively managing. The only ones that need your vote, and I'll just speak to these, there's a budget amendment for Pikeville, and then a resolution to appoint a finance officer for Pikeville. The Pikeville unit summary is on page 8 of 17. And the budget amendment is on page 10 of 17. The town received $100,000 in grant revenues from a state grant, and they are appropriating that that money to spend it for some police maintenance and equipment, for police vehicles, and then some streets expenditures to spend down the whole 100,000. So you'll be voting to adopt that. And then on page 11, we're working towards returning the town to local control. And with that in mind, we're appointing Wendy Holland, who is a town employee, as finance officer, and Eric Faust, who works for us, who is currently finance officer, will be appointed deputy finance officer. And he will be retained as signatory on the bank account, as I will be. Michael Milam, who also works with us, will all be account signatories. Finally, Kathy Fields, who works for the town as well, will be appointed as a deputy finance officer for the town and an account signatory. This is so that we can begin to get the bank signature cards ready and can get the town ready to start signing their own checks. We've been signing their checks for a year and a half or however long we've been managing them. So I need those two items voted on, and that's all I've got for the unit summaries today.
Thank you, Susan. And did you want to say anything forward-looking about Pikeville and your enthusiasm and expectation that we'll be doing something positive with them in the next few weeks?
Yes, we do expect that we'll be able to, over the next couple of months, 6 weeks perhaps, return that town to local control. And we're very excited for them. They have, excuse me, they have worked very hard and have accomplished a lot. And I want to commend our staff, Eric Faust and Michael Milam, who have been working closely with that community. They've all worked very well collaboratively, and it's definitely a win for both the LGC and the town.
Okay. Thank you, Susan. And Mr. Burns was attempting to give a little round of applause. Susan, I heard your voice break because I know how much our staff puts into all of these situations. And so give him a little round of applause, Mr. Burns. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I'm very pleased that we've gotten to this point with this town. So. Thank you.
We'll entertain a motion to approve the budget amendment and the FO resolution. The FO resolution necessary for Pikeville. Do I hear a motion? Okay. Motion by Secretary Marshall, second by Mr. Burns. Any further discussion?
One quick matter.
Yes, sir.
Treasurer. May need an amendment to the budget amendment because there's an extra zero on your $50,000. So I want to mark that out so they're not amended to add $500,000.
Well, they're not going to get off the watch list if that's still amazing. They're upside. Good catch. Did everybody catch that?
A typo.
I think it's a typo, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll fix that. We will not key it in the system that way, or they will not key it. So.
Secretary Marshall makes a motion for that technical correction, seconded by Commissioner Burns. Any further discussion? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll.
Okay. Auditor Wood?
Aye.
Thank you. Secretary Penny?
Aye.
Thank you. Councilwoman Hoffman?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Philbeck?
Aye.
And Treasurer Falwell?
Aye. We'll now turn the meeting over to Sharon. This is going to be a little bit like a Loretta Lynn song. So we just built you up. Now we're going to burn you down a little bit. So we got to build them back up at the end.
Where I am speaking from attachment. This is our report on year plus late audits. At the July meeting, we presented, July meeting, we presented the list of 14 local governments that were at least 2 years behind on their audits. And we told you we would keep you updated on that. We're going to continue to do that on a bi-monthly basis because there's just not enough change in the list, unfortunately, on a monthly basis. And then as of today, their 2022 audits are late, so that just adds another year. The towns of Lacama and Black Creek are still behind back to 2019. The town of Baden has submitted both of their audits for 20 and 21, so we will not include them going forward. Swan Quarter did not provide us an update this month. We requested multiple times to get that and did not receive it. I do know that they have talked to a couple of different auditors, trying to get somebody under contract. Since our last update, Jackson, the town of Jackson, has submitted their contract for 21 and submitted their audit. They got that in yesterday. Micro submitted its 2020 audit, and their plan is to have 21 in by December. Town of Rhonda also has submitted their 20 and 21, and they will not be included in the report going forward. We have included in the attachment copies of the exact emails from the units, and then I added some additional LGC comments at the end. Most of them have made progress, at least by getting somebody under contract, but not all of them. Any questions about any of these units in particular?
She didn't have to hit her button. Go ahead.
So for these that are not responding or not getting anything done, what is our plan for them? We're just gonna can them just keep sitting on the list?
They are on the unit assistance list for one thing. So if they tried to borrow any money, that would have to come through us pretty much for almost any sizable amount.
They're more, I guess, pressing issues like day to day, knowing how much cash they got, can they pay their bills, money being stolen. So I get they can't borrow money, but I'm just thinking that some way, somehow, if they're going to be an incorporated unit and they've got elected officials, they have to keep the books for their citizens and take care of their assets. And if they're not doing that, we'll keep not doing it.
They are at the top of our risk assessment for units that are in trouble. And Coach team will be checking in with them to see where they are financially. I do have confirmation that Lacama has got plenty of cash as far as being able to pay their bills and that kind of thing.
Yeah, but you still didn't answer my question. What are we going to do about those that constantly sit? How long are they going to be allowed to sit on the list, not have their books in order, bank reconciliations not done, nobody knows what's going on financially, and their audits are not done? It's exactly what happened at Spring Lake. They went 3 years without an audit, and she stole over $600,000. So not having an audit done and not doing their bank reconciliations is critical. So how long are we going to let them continue to do that?
We'll present a plan at the next meeting of how we're going to deal with these units.
Other questions? Thank you, Sharon. We'll look forward to that.
Yes, I will.
I'll now turn it over to Sharon for discussion about Winnebago and their petition.
All right. The town of Winnebago, under a new statutory requirement, submitted a request to us. That's under Session Law 2021-124. They submitted a request to the commission asking for a statement from the LGC regarding the proposed municipality's prospects for financial viability and effective fiscal management. So this allows us to get in front of some of these issues that we're dealing with some of these other units. The community of Winnebago is seeking municipal incorporation. They're a community in Brunswick County. They've requested the statement from the LGC, and then they will petition the General Assembly for incorporation. We provided them with a list of questions and requested specific documents and information so that we could make an informed recommendation to the commission regarding their incorporation efforts. All of the relevant material is provided in attachment 1 to this part of the agenda. Based on our review of their responses and documentation, we are recommending that the commission provide the following statement to the community. Pursuant to NCGS 120-163C, and based on the information provided by the community of Winnebago, the commission finds that the community has not sufficiently proven that it will employ effective fiscal management practices, and based on the information presented, cannot find that the community's prospects for financial viability are sound. Staff did go through a long series of questions and a number of documents from the community, including a draft budget ordinance, which was not balanced. We also provided or asked for explanations on estimated revenues, which they did not have any revenue estimates. The ordinance did not levy a property tax. So they did not follow the proper format for a budget. Several other questions, and you've got all the details there that they answered, were not really reasonable in our expectations. And we just feel like they do not have a good working knowledge of Chapter 159 at this time.
Thank you, Sharon. We're now on to, before we go to discuss our safe harbor,
Mr. Treasurer.
excuse me,
Treasurer.
we're going to have a vote on that. Sorry.
Well, we can vote. Now I have a related question. In dealing with this issue, I checked with my staff, our land records division, and was asking them, you know, how many new towns had been created in a certain period of time. And unfortunately, they could not tell me. And we are the people that are supposed to keep up with the annexations and where all the boundaries are for census purposes and other things. And the problem is that when towns go to referendum and it's not passed, that information never comes to us. Does the treasurer's office keep a list of towns that go to the referendum process to create a new town, but it fails? Is there some official notice to the state when the vote fails? I mean, you know, we don't follow that it's happening. We would know more now with this new system because it has to come through here, but.
It's a great question.
Secretary Marshall, not when it fails through the municipal incorporation statutes right now, but there was a change. I'd have to find the session law under last session law that requires units that are formed subject to LGC oversight to notify the treasurer's office. So not exactly what you're talking about, but at least that's an improvement as far as some of the authorities and other things that get created that are subject to LGC oversight. Those are now required to notify the treasurer's office that they exist.
Okay. We have extreme difficulty with a lot of municipalities as they annex, which they haven't been doing too much lately, but the law requires them to send us a new plat with the whole outside boundary. And they just, that is a costly activity, I would guess, but they refuse to do it, decline to do it, and we have no way to force them to do it. So
That's a great point. I had not thought of that, Secretary Marshall, and we look forward to any opportunities we can find to partner with Secretary of State's office to make sure that question doesn't go unanswered in the future.
Mr. Treasurer, I have a question.
Mr. Penny.
Sharon, assuming they get someone who is more familiar with the statute, would they be able to write an application that would still give you the assurances that that this town is going to be viable? Or is it just so small it's just never going to be viable.
Their population is approximately 6,700,
Oh,
which is not a bad size. It's not great, but I don't believe they plan on running their own water sewer, which would be a key issue for me for a town that size. So
so
I
if they're not giving water or sewer, I mean, so what services are they getting?
they will be providing water sewer through, I believe it's through Brunswick County.
But aren't those people still getting it through Brunswick County now?
I believe they are, yes, sir.
So what am I getting extra other than taxes?
That was one of the problems we had with the application. We couldn't quite tell.
All right, so by and large, it's more than just they weren't familiar. Even if they were familiar, they probably were gonna have a problem. Is that?
We believe
You don't
they
have
have,
to say that, but am I incorrect in saying that?
no, sir. I think they've got some work to do. But as far as their prospects in the future, they certainly could remedy, I believe, all the things that we had concerns about.
But they would still be a city that's pretty much giving no additional services other than taxes.
Not based on what they provided us with this
I mean,
round.
because the sheriff is gonna give them protection, police protection.
We believe so, yes.
And I'm assuming the county is Brunswick County, so I know they have fire protection.
Yes.
True. But to Secretary Penny's point, again, I appreciate the direction that the LGC is headed, because I just see this as one more municipality that is too small to hire the finance officer and the accounting, and people are forgetting that nothing's hardly done on paper anymore, and so it takes computers and software and IT, and that's a lot of the complaints from these smaller municipalities, is that, you know, they can't get enough software that they can get their transactions to balance. So all the way around, this is just another municipality waiting to show up on the UAL. They're just so small, it's hard to hire a CIO and a finance officer with an accounting background and the abilities to do the job.
Thank you, Auditor Wood. Any other comments? I would like to say that, you know, sometimes we focus on the how, and this application reflects the how they were trying to incorporate, but there must be something behind why. And so I'm not sure when I'm scheduled to be back down in that part of North Carolina, but I'll try to understand if maybe the encroachment, the movement or direction of some other incorporated towns is threatening the folks that live in Winnebago. I'm not up to speed on that, but I think I need to get up to speed on that. So I accept staff's recommendation on this, and we're promised to think about it as we go forward. I can say, even though I don't have any empirical evidence of this, that I can't tell you how many towns have been created. I can tell you how many police departments have been uncreated as those services have been contracted out to sheriff's departments. So there is a lot of cooperation going on regarding police protection across the state. It's not on our agenda, but I just want to ask this as the chair, given the news that has come out of Brunswick County with another town called Navassa, who is going to be signing the paychecks of the public servants of Navassa, given the news that was just reported?
We don't have that information yet. Mr. Oh, I can't remember his name right. Mr. Hardy, his resignation is effective, I believe, the middle of the month, sometime around then. So we've got a couple of weeks, but that is on our list to make sure that they have somebody.
Okay. Thank you very much. With that, we'll turn the meeting over to Jennifer.
Mr.
and-
Treasurer?
Yes.
We actually need a motion to approve that statement by
Did I
staff.
get a motion?
We have no motion, sir.
Do I have a motion to approve, take staff's recommendation regarding Winnebago?
I moved Nancy Hoffman.
Thank you, Ms. Hoffman. Second,
Second.
Mr. Burns, second. Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll.
Thank you. And to be clear, this is a statement of non-recommendation, so to speak. Auditor Wood?
Aye.
Thank you. Secretary Marshall?
Aye.
Secretary Penny?
Aye.
Thank you. Burns, Hoffman, Mr. Philbeck?
Aye.
Thank you. And Treasurer Falwell?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, members. Now we'll on to our last item, and that is the our safe harbor policy resolution.
I'm speaking from attachment G, and as Sharon mentioned before, this past July, Session Law 2022-53 was enacted, and the other part of this session law, it modifies the statutes related to the LGC approval of requests to issue general obligation bonds and some of the findings. So the changes apply to the bonds issued under bond orders introduced on or after October 1, 2022. So this does not affect any of the bond referendums coming up next week. In the summary, what has been modified is the assumption used by a finance officer of the unit in preparing the statement of estimated interest filed with the clerk pursuant to General Statute 159, 55.1 are reasonable. So in discussing that, to make sure that when presented to the commission, that the findings are reasonable, this safe harbor policy would be given to the staff, and the recommendations are that if equal principal payments are made over 20 years and the interest rate is equal to or greater that of bond buyer index for the 20-year plus, and the summary needs to be updated to within 25 days, and that's on the resolution, prior to the introduction of the bond order, plus 200 basis points, that we find that that would be a reasonable assumption. It is pretty conservative at this point, but knowing that the time lapse between the time that the bond order is introduced at a local level and the commission would get the application, that would allow that the additional 200 basis points if there's any movement in the bond buyer index on the market. So the resolution would have that any of the general obligation bond applications that have those parameters in the assumptions, that would be a safe harbor for them to not have it as a reasonable assumption.
Okay. Thank you very much. We'll need a motion to accept safe harbor policy resolution. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Secretary Marshall, and Ms. Hoffman, if you'll do a second. Thank you. Second by Mrs. Hoffman. Any further discussion? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll.
Okay, safe harbor resolution, Marshall, Hoffman. Auditor Wood?
Aye.
Thank you. Secretary Penny?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Burns?
Aye.
Mr. Philbeck?
Aye.
And Treasurer Falwell?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, members, before we adjourn, we'll go around the horn. I want to start out by saying that right outside of where we are here at Western Carolina, there starting to look like homecoming. So there's a scrambler out there. And so any commission members who want to get into the scrambler and test ride it before the Secretary of Labor gets here to see if it's safe or not, we'll be glad to do so. On the way down here yesterday, I had an opportunity to present would be a better use of word, to the North Carolina School for the Deaf. One of my duties is also to sit on the State Board of Education, and it was quite an honor to present to those students and to have questions from them in sign language. So especially Alder Wood and Secretary Marshall, any opportunity that you get to just do that sometime as you're heading westbound, I highly recommend it, and it's very fulfilling. On top of that, we were able to present several thousands of dollars like we did today to Western Carolina University from nccash.com. The School for the Deaf had thousands of dollars sitting at nccash.com. So we were able to present that, and it was just a very festive time on Halloween to be at the North Carolina School for the Deaf, and a great asset for our community. As I went further westbound yesterday, we were actually trying to present a check at nccash.com for ghost hunters of Asheville. We couldn't find them. No, it really happened. We couldn't find them. Right? You remember that? So then we looked at Ghost Town. Ghost Town is closed down, right? Okay, couldn't find that either. So fortunately, we settled on Alzheimer's Association of Buncombe County, and a lady came up and met me at Highland Brewing Company, which is one of the great entrepreneurs and businesses that was the embryo of the craft beer business in Western North Carolina. I don't drink, but have a strong appreciation for what they've done for this community. While we were there at Highland Brewing, the founder of Highland Brewing had money sitting at nccash.com. The Highland Brewing Company had money sitting at nccash.com. And two of the bartenders had money sitting at nccash.com. So anyway, it's been a very fruitful 36-hour, excuse me, in Western North Carolina. So I appreciate the hospitality that's been extended to us. We will poll the commission as well as the staff to see what our plans are for possibly doing this next year. It would be logical on a crisscross on a pattern to try to do something in southeastern North Carolina and northeast North Carolina next year. And there's many opportunities for us to do that at either Boone, Appalachian, or any of our community colleges, or Pembroke, or Fayetteville State, or any of our areas down in that neck of the woods. Sharon mentioned the MPA program that's at the University at North Carolina, Wilmington. So any opportunity that we have to talk to potential students about being public servants, we always try to do that also. So with that, if anybody has anything else, feel free to chime in, but I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. I was asked how long we were going to be here today, and somebody said, well, just check the weather outside, and that's going to tell you how long you're going to be there today. It's a Chamber of Commerce day in Western North Carolina, so we really appreciate being here, and we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Treasurer, before we adjourn, just let me thank the staff for the new format. For a graphical learner like me, it was much clearer and just a very good change for me. At least I can't speak for everybody else, but for me, I actually enjoyed reading it.
I want to echo because the size of the type has grown larger.
Secretary Penny, you've almost got the move down, because when they clap for you at the School of the Deaf, they do this. So you almost had it, Secretary Penny. So you can go, there you go.
My mother taught at the School for the Deaf.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's great. And yes, that was something that's very much appreciated, and it's been a lot of people have worked on that. So thank you very much. So a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Ms. Alder Wood, second.
Second.
Second, co-seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll.
Go. Or Treasurer, would you just like to ask for a voice vote? You may.
Yes, and then we'll go into pause. So you all have your pause here, right? So
Yeah.
all those in favor say aye.
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 And opposed, no. The ayes have it. We're hereby adjourned. Thank you.